That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Strange Darling, the sophomore film directed by JT Mollner, which premiered at the 2023 Fantastic Fest. It is being released courtesy of Magenta Light Studios on August 23rd, 2024.
Do you know JT Mollner's first film?
It was called Outlaws and Angels. I did not see it.
I like that name. We received a lot of comments about this movie. Originally, I was not planning on watching it. But aside from the peer pressure, I really like Barbara Hershey.
Same.
And Kyle Gallner.
And Ed Begley Jr.
And Kyle Gallner's last film we reviewed,
The Passenger,
I thought was excellent. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a hard decision to squeeze this one in. What is Strange Darling about? Nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. What's your pull quote?
With its characterization as disrupted as the narrative, Strange Darling relies heavily on style, yielding some interesting moments, but ultimately revealing itself as a butchered cat-and-mouse procedure where victim and perpetrator become synonymous.
Mine. Beyond the much-hyped twist, Strange Darling comes across as a very simple but effective serial killer flick. Yeah, the comments I read were saying, like, go in blind, there's a big twist.
Is it that big?
I mean, it is. So, big spoiler as we tell the story, but the film, we're told, the opening says that between 2018 and 2020, there was a prolific serial killer who was operating, like, in the middle of the country somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that this movie is a dramatization of their final moments. I thought it said months, but it really only amounts to one night. Mm-hmm. So maybe I read that wrong. But either way, we're told that it's going to be in 6 chapters, but then the film starts with chapter 3. So it's told out of sequence. Mm-hmm. So the sequence is told in is that we see a woman, a blonde lady played by
Willa Fitzgerald.
She's running, she's been injured, she's clearly afraid, and then we cut to her driving in a 1978 Pinto down the road, being chased by Kyle Gallner in a big Ford pickup truck. Mm-hmm. And because of the opening title card, we assume he's the killer. And he's trying to stop her. We see him at one point, like, shoot out her back window. Her car crashes. She's able to get out. He chases her, but she makes it into the woods and runs into a cabin occupied by Barbara Hershey and Ed Begley Jr. Mm-hmm. asking for help. And then we cut to how these two people met. And it's not quite clear to me how they met, but we see Kyle Gallner and the blonde wearing a red wig.
A raggedy red wig.
Inside of his pickup truck, just talking, drinking, smoking a lot of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Clearly, like, they're going to hook up because they're sitting in front of a hotel.
And the next hotel is 72 miles away.
Then we cut to them in the hotel, and he's choking her. Like, we think he's trying to kill her. But then we realize that they're role-playing and that she's into bondage. So they have a safe word, which she does use, which we can get to. But then it becomes clear that she's the one who has nefarious intentions. And ultimately, we find out that she's the serial killer called the Electric Lady. Mm-hmm. So she has drugged him in this hotel room with ketamine. And she's about to kill him when he shoots her in the ear. So in the opening of the film, when we see her running with a bloody, injured, it's because he shot her ear off. And unfortunately for the Electric Lady, Kyle Gallner's character is a police officer. Mm-hmm. So he had a gun on him when she drugged him. So he starts chasing her, which is the beginning of the film. And then we had seen in a previous chapter that the Electric Lady had killed Ed Begley Jr. because he was going to call the cops, but lets Barbara Hershey escape. Mm-hmm. So then towards the end of the film, we see that Kyle Gallner has found her in this house, and he ends up shooting her through like a refrigerator. and then
freezer.
A freezer, and handcuffs her to it while he calls one of his cop buddies to come help him. And while they're waiting, she gets the upper hand on him and kills him because she bites him in the neck and severs like a blood vessel. So the cops show up, a man and a woman, and the man is clearly friends with Kyle Gallner. And the electric lady is handcuffed to the freezer, and she sort of staged herself as if she were just assaulted sexually. So the female cop is like, oh my gosh, we have to help her. Let's unhandcuff her and get her to the hospital. But the male cop is saying, no, we need to wait for the paramedics and homicide to get here. We don't really know who the victim is. But the female cop is insisting, like, can't you see that she's been assaulted? Clearly he was the one. They find cocaine on him. So they uncuff her and attempt to drive her to the hospital when Barbara Hershey, who had been running in the woods, pops up and stops the cop car. And when she sees the electric lady in the back seat, the electric lady shoots and kills Barbara Hershey. She lets the female cop leave, kills the male cop, and then stumbles onto the street where a woman in a pickup truck picks her up. Not unlike the end of In a Violent Nature. So they're riding down the road when the electric lady pulls a gun on this woman. But again, unfortunately for her, this lady has a gun of her own and shoots the electric lady. So the final 2 minutes of the film are just the drive with the electric lady slowly
bleeding out.
Bleeding out, the end.
Best part of the movie.
I think I did enjoy it well enough.
I think once that its gag is revealed and we understand that the lady is the perpetrator, I started to get quite bored with it.
I did as well. But to start with the positives, we're told in the beginning that the film is shot entirely on 35mm film.
By Giovanni Ribisi.
And I liked the look of the film.
Yeah.
He's the narrator, Giovanni Ribisi.
He's the cinematographer.
Oh, wait, he's the cinematographer? Who's the narrator?
Jason Patric.
That's right. Yeah, so very interesting. I did like the look of the film. I like Kyle Gallner. I think his performance is really good. Because he also, before we know the gag, he does give off, because he's a nice looking man, but he also gives off like...
He can be sinister.
Right, so it was very effective in thinking that he's the killer.
As an adult. Kind of like he was in the Scream reboot as well.
Oh, sure. I'm not familiar with the female lead.
She's been in a bunch of stuff. She played actually the young version in flashbacks of Claire Underwood, Robin Wright Penn in
House of Cards.
House of Cards. So you've seen her around before, but she's donning a couple different looks in this, and because of the cinematography, I think she reminded me of a lot of different people.
Yeah, you said it was all over the place because you thought she looked like...
There's a scene in the bathroom in the red light where she's angled in a certain way. It was giving me Cate Blanchett. I thought of Amy Irving, Timothée Chalamet, Ezra Miller, Whitney Cummings. She was blending into all these kinds of white people for me.
And the way she's acting, I thought she... Because once we realize that she's the killer, she starts to become more unhinged and is clearly psychotic. It was giving me Damon Wayans as Handyman on In Living Color. The way she moves her mouth, the way she runs,
I think
it's very effective.
I remember you saying that while she's dying.
And then while she's dying too, yeah.
But, I don't know. Women behaving badly, I feel like I need a little more than just that. Because essentially this is doing the same thing as that music video for Prodigy, Smack My Bitch Up. If you remember that.
Yes, I do. So I think that she comes across as this like mindless killer. So then it feels like a slasher film, but it's deeper than that. And I kind of wish someone does ask her, why do you do this? And she goes, well, sometimes when I see people, I see devils. And then we get like a subliminal flash of like what looks like a devil. And that's kind of the extent of it. And I almost think that we could have kept the movie exactly the way it is, but instead of opening with her running, what if we would have opened with her with a different man and he's being abusive to her, or the way it's shot, it looks like she's the victim, but then clearly she escapes, and then we flash forward to her running from another man. That maybe would have made me feel like almost like an Eileen Wuornos type scenario where she's been victimized by men.
Or Juliette Lewis in Natural Born Killers.
So in the beginning, when we think Kyle Gallner's the killer, as the audience, I feel extra bad for her. Like, gosh, she just has really bad luck with these horrible men. But then when we realize she's the killer, then it would have felt more like, oh, well, due to her trauma, I can, not that it's okay, but like I can see how she evolved into this person.
I think we're both searching for a little more
meaning
and or empathy to an understanding. And when you're already having a disruptive narrative, I mean, I feel like that would have been easy.
Yeah, it was hard to have feelings towards the killer. So then I just felt like I didn't feel much for her. The main feeling I had once we realized she's the killer was for Kyle Gallner's character, who's credited as the demon. Mm-hmm. So that's another, I mean, I guess like a red herring.
Well, because that's in the very beginning of the film. It says that's his character name.
Right. So then, of course, you're primed to think he's the killer. But the main feeling I had with him when we realized that she's the trouble was that fear of, you know, like many of us have gotten into situations with strangers and done things we probably shouldn't have and gone places we shouldn't have or invited people to our place who we shouldn't have. And then so already that anxiety and tension of like, maybe this is not a good decision. And then when you realize that people are a little off, and then that fear of like, oh gosh, this could go left.
I need to get out of here. Mm-hmm.
I need to end this in a way that doesn't agitate them. And I think the most effective part of the film in that regard is when Kyle Gallner's character realizes she's on one and says like, I'm getting out of here. And then things go left. But like that like 2-3 minute sequence I thought was the most effective.
Well, and then drugs are heavily involved. It almost seems like the ketamine is the catalyst for her switching.
Well, yeah. Well, she gives him ketamine and then she's hopped up on cocaine.
Oh, right. But
yeah.
But it seems very much drug related. But her behavior changes.
Well, yes, because we should probably actually, let me go through the chapters. So the film starts with chapter 3, Can You Help Me Please? And that's referring to her outrunning Kyle Gallner and then knocking on Barbara Hershey and Ed Begley Jr.'s door. Then we go to chapter 5, Here Kitty Kitty, and that's Kyle Gallner gets to Barbara Hershey's house and this house has a lot of like, what do you call those?
Bureau? No.
Trunks.
Trunks. Yeah.
In front of like beds.
A shiffer robe? No, trunks.
No, trunks. And he keeps shooting through the trunks thinking that she's in one. And then finally he shoots through the freezer and hits the electric lady. But as he's shooting, he's saying, Here, kitty, kitty. Mm-hmm. Then we go to chapter 1, which is how he met her in the car and they're talking about hooking up. And that one's called Mr. Snuffy, which is really referring to Mr. Snuffleupagus because that's her safe word. Because she's kind of playing with him at first, acting like, well, I don't really do this. She even asks him, like, you know, in today's economy, I gotta ask, are you a serial killer? And that was pretty good too, because he looks her in her eyes and says like, no.
And at that point, you're thinking he is.
Right, you still think he is. But then she starts to become less demure and mindful. And I don't know why I said that. I hate that. To then saying like, I'm a freak and I want to be choked and tied up. And like, I want to do extreme stuff and let's smoke these cigarettes and drink this brown liquor.
Yeah.
And then she just says that I want you to be extreme with me. Beat me, like do your worst, and my safe word is Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Like Rihanna sang about in S&M.
Then we go to chapter 4, which is the mountain people, and that's when we get a better portrait of Barbara Hershey and Ed Begley Jr. Their house had so much stuff in it. It was like a tchotchke nightmare.
Well, yes, they did say that they're doomsdayers.
But the best part of that chapter is we see Ed Begley Jr. cook breakfast for Barbara Hershey, who both look really nice to me.
I agree, yeah.
Although Ed Begley has this little like rat tail that's braided. That's pretty funny.
It's not evident at first. You kind of have to like, oh, he's got a rat tail.
He still looks great. I remember having a crush on him from She-Devil.
She-Devil. Well, you know, and his father was an excellent actor as well.
But can you describe what he cooks Barbara Hershey for breakfast?
It looks like it's the last that they are living with reckless abandon.
Like it's their last meal.
Like
he puts a stick of butter into a frying pan and then makes 2 eggs over easy Then he makes pancakes.
Puts that on top.
Then he makes these greasy ass sausages. And then he makes a sandwich with the eggs, the sausage. He puts an entire stick of butter in the sandwich.
There's more butter. Then there's
whipped cream. Syrup. Presents the sandwich to his wife, and then she very delicately puts a strawberry on top of it. That was a really fun scene. Okay, then we go to chapter 2, and it's titled, Do You Like to Party? And that's when she introduces the drugs. She assaults him. She cuts her initials, which are EL, Electric Lady, into his chest. He shoots her in the ear after she discovers, because she takes his wallet and is rummaging through it and sees his like sheriff's badge. Then he... when he shoots at her, she runs out of... They're in a hotel that is actually nicer than what you imagine from the beginning.
Yeah. They have a nice little carpet outside.
And that's and I think that's when the story got silly to me, because at that point I feel like he should have called for help. There's a man in the room next door who also has a gun, and he doesn't do anything. Then we see the Electric Lady running in her bra and underwear to the front desk, which is far away. Locks herself in there because she's saying there's a crazy man trying to kill me. She kills the front desk agent and then steals the car and clothes of the guest who was in the lobby.
Was she a guest or was she working there?
Well, she was wearing scrubs.
That's true, but those also...
it's not clear.
You could clean in those clothes, I guess.
Oh, maybe she was well, maybe... I don't know. Either way, that's where she gets the 78 Pinto and takes off. Mm-hmm. Then chapter 6 is titled Who's Gary Gilmore? And that's referring to, I believe he was a prisoner in Utah who insisted on being executed, which then sparked, because I think, I kind of read about it, so now I feel stupid not being fully informed, but I believe Gary Gilmore is a prisoner who, prior to that, there had been like a 10-year sort of hiatus for capital punishment, and then he insisting on it was like kind of reignited it. Mm-hmm. But then I understand there weren't that many executions after that either. But
somebody brings up that name.
The Electric Lady brings it up. But that's where she assaults Kyle Gallner, gets the upper hand, kills him, and then the two cops show up, blah, blah, blah. Then we get the epilogue titled The Electric Lady. And that's when she's in the car with the cops and explains that sometimes she sees doubles. And then we get the ending. I don't really have that many notes because it was very simple.
Well, I don't know. Like, I've seen a lot of cinema and I've seen a lot of deconstructive narrative cinema. So there wasn't anything innately new that I was bringing to the table. And again, it's enjoyable to a degree. I liked it better than like back in 2015, there was all this buzz, which instigated me to see this film starring John Hawkes and Robert Forster called Too Late. And that also was a film that was everybody was talking about, it's shot in 35 millimeter, just like this, and is constructed of these long, one-take continuous sequences that are told out of order. And it's kind of a neo-noir, and I remember really not liking that, but everybody was so obsessed with this indie film that had all this style, but to me, no real narrative substance. And I don't know, to me, I love a lot more details in the narrative and characterization than innately the style, but that's just my personal preference.
This, to me, feels like In a Violent Nature. Like in that film, the gimmick was we're watching this very basic slasher film play out from the perspective of the killer, which is only really for like 70% of the film. Mm-hmm. And in this one, the same. Like, it's a deconstructive narrative where the killer is not who we suspect. But yeah, once that gag is revealed, it's effective. I enjoyed it well enough. I definitely agree you should go in blind.
I think that way about most things, though.
Sure, but I mean, sometimes, I don't like going in blind because I feel like I have a hard time following things, so then it helps me really see the details. But in this instance, because the gag is really the only thing that's kind of unique about it, I feel like it would deflate it for someone.
Yes, I agree.
But I'm saying this at the end of this video where it's already been spoiled. Anyway, tell a friend not to spoil it first. What would you give Strange Darling?
2.5.
I think it's good. I would give it 3 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.